back, Lior, Ben, Eddie, and Luci. Today, we're talking about the role of a Scrum Master. And oftentimes we see in companies when they're adopting the Agile process, it's a really hard mindset shift to go from what a project manager is to what a Scrum Master is. And sometimes we fall into this trap of our Scrum Masters sliding back into that traditional role of a project manager, which really isn't what that role is intended for. It's something entirely different. And so I'm curious, with all of our experience on the call today, what have you seen and how does this happen and how do you prevent it?
There's a natural kind of progression to it where as a scrum master you are not only often going to be a very communicative person, but you're in a very communicative role where you end up having to interact with a lot of people around the business. um, Naturally, of course, when you interact with a lot of people around the business, you pick up a lot of knowledge along the way. This is how this project's going. He's the guy to talk to for this. This is where you need to go if you want to get this sorted. Oh, when you're dealing with infosec, you have to do this and this and this, otherwise they'll ignore you for a week, that kind of thing. And as you build up that knowledge, people start kind of relying on you, right? And then all of a sudden you turn into, I'm not sure if it's a relic of the past, if that's how managers used to be, because I haven't been around long enough to know the past. Maybe some of our elders can help us out with that one. I don't know if it's a part of the future, and that as you start as a scrum master, you begin with certain roles and you end up kind of naturally evolving into becoming a more kind of integrated part of the company you're in. I'm not sure if it's an issue or if it's just a natural thing that happens. And I'd really like to hear kind of Ben, Lee, or Lucci, Alana, what do you guys think about this? How have you seen this? Yeah, just go ahead and help me out here.
I think it's more broadly than more broad than just Scrum Masters. I think it's consultancy as a whole. So if you go into a business, you're paid as a consultant to give fresh eyes and an honest opinion. And when you're with a business for a longer period of time, it becomes harder to have those fresh eyes, and it becomes harder to give that honest opinion. So just generally, as a consultant or providing consultancy, you have to be incredibly disciplined. Like either you say, I'm never going to engage with a client for more than a month, and I'm going to keep it fresh, and I'm going to go to a new client and I'm going to tell them the truth, and maybe I'll go back in a year and I'll tell them the truth again. Or you have to have some professional diligence or exercises or discipline to maintain that freshness, if you like, and that truthfulness all the way through. And that becomes hard. It becomes hard for everyone. It becomes hard for me. But I think what I have found is that, although it becomes easier to accept the way things are because you're in it now, you're immersed in it. I have found that the response to my honesty over longer engagements is still a net positive. It's still better than keeping my mouth shut. So I may put some people's noses out of joints that I've become friends with, but overall, my net impact is still positive by telling the truth and keeping that fresh perspective, even though I now know the politics and whatever. Like, so yeah, I'd encourage people just to, you really got to internalize it and be like, okay, how am I going to stay true to being a good consultant and not a employee or a member of a team?
It's interesting from an individual perspective, from us as contractors going in, to think there is a slippery slope there, and you have to be very cognitively aware of it as you go in and kind of stick. I mean, knowing your boundaries and drawing your lines is really important. I'd be interested to hear on a kind of organizational level, right? So if I am a contractor going in, I should avoid these things and stay true to, my role and not get too ingrained and not fall down into that spiral. Um, as an organization, if I see this happening to my contractors, because obviously not everyone's going to be able to avoid it and stick true to their purpose as well as you, Ben. Um, how do I prevent that on a larger scale? What can I do to kind of stop that from happening, assuming that it's something that's bad for the business, which I don't know that it is either.
A part of our job is, I liken it to a therapist or a doctor or a lawyer. There's a healthy mix of confidentiality with objectivity and a certain amount of detachment. It could be natural if you're just starting out to bond strongly with your team members, to really get involved with, to really root for their success and kind of put your emotions behind that. But when you do that, then you lose a part of what makes you so valuable that would actually help them get to that end. So that often gets better as you go from gig to gig, and you learn and you grow. As a consultant, you become able to be a little bit more detached, but it's certainly a practice, and it's something that you have to stay vigilant to make sure that you can maintain.
I think I'll extend that. I think absolutely, like advice, like if you're saying specifically how do you do it, advice would be to move around, especially earlier in your career, and get more exposure to more teams, and get into that rhythm of actually doing consultancy rather than just kind of being a hired hand for a period of time. The other thing that naturally happens, and this is from my perspective, and the dynamics will be different for different people, but there's this concept of kind of FU money, which means you have enough money such that you feel comfortable enough to tell the truth, knowing that if the truth isn't well received, you're not going to go out on the street, right? You're not going to fail on your mortgage. You're not going to be able to not pay your rent. You're going to go out, you're going to get another job, and you're going to be okay, such that you're afforded that luxury of being able to tell the truth without worrying about your personal circumstance. Early on in careers, that can be a lot harder. It could be, I've got a mortgage, I've got a wife, I've got young kids, I've got to make those payments, I've got to meet those obligations. I'm not going to risk my job. And therein lies some problems in itself. Like if you tie your job to a client is a bit of a problem, but I'm not going to risk my job for fear of then becoming personally unstable. That changes with time as well. Like as you're more, in my articulation, as I'm more financially stable, other people will have stability in different ways, absolutely. But as you're more stable, you will be afforded that luxury to be slightly more truthful, I would imagine. So anyone else have any practical tips? Like as a young person, move around as much as you can. What else?
Yeah, I think that there's value in, I've been in that situation when I was first starting out, and I think there was value also in getting a look into other parts of a company that I probably wouldn't have had if I was just restricted to the Scrum Master role. But then those other responsibilities also limited the things that I wanted to do as a Scrum Master. So I think, and to Ben's point earlier, I think as time goes on, as a Scrum Master, you start to feel what are things that you could say no to, things that maybe you could field out to other people or empower other people to do the things that fall under the project management role. Or you just get better at communicating, hey, if I'm doing this, then I won't be able to do XYZ, checking in. And then, if you're okay with it and your employer is okay with it, then you reach a new amalgamation of what a Scrum Master is, plus maybe some project management roles. I think in the times that we live in, people, are expected to wear more than one hat, that has negatives and positives, I think. But I think at the end of the day, it depends on where you see yourself moving. And if you want to move into a role which is strictly Scrum Master role, then I think, and you're expected to do something else, then I think it might be time, to Ben's point, changing clients if you can be okay with looking elsewhere or without being work for a little bit. But I think it comes down to having those clear expectations when you sign those contracts or you start a new client of what it is that you're expected to do, so that when you do feel like things are piling on, you could say, hey, this wasn't what we originally agreed to. Are the needs changing? Let's talk about it. And then you can decide from there what you need to do and what your employer needs to do based on the needs and wants of all parties involved.
I think that's perfect, Alana. I think that's bang on. Like, it's a very specific thing that you should be doing to manage that to make it easier to manage that pull in two directions. Write it down, readdress it every 3 months. If you're not in line with what your original expectation was, then we can have a frank conversation, either realign what they need or leave the business.
Yeah, I actually can speak from a very specific experience in my life where I just felt like things kept changing, the goalposts kept changing, and I did ask for a meeting saying, hey, like, can we just get in clear writing what it is that you want me to do so I can focus on those things, because things have changed. And I got that. I got it in writing. I understood then when I had to refocus. And then I also understood when I was no longer happy or doing what I wanted to do, that I could also make a change. So I think it is helpful to just have those conversations when you feel like things are straying from what the original intent was. All right, I think that's all the time we have for now. Really curious from our viewers what your thoughts are. If you've been in this situation, if you have any tips or tricks, would love to hear from you. Please let us know in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe to our other, to just our channel in general, because we have other videos for you. So we'll see you soon.